So in the previous lesson, we understood what are exceptions. Now let's see how do we deal with them. So this was the code that we ran in the previous lesson, and this gave us an exception, an arithmetic exception. So how do we solve for it? So one way to solve for it is to use try and catch. So we will enclose the code within a try and a catch. And as the name catch suggests, it will catch the exception. Okay. So here in the catch I am writing system.out.println inside catch. So I am inside the catch here, and I will also do system.out.println the exception. So let's look at this code first. So what have I done here? I have enclosed this whole code within a try and a catch. So within a try, and at the end of it, a try is always followed by the catch. So I have enclosed this code within a try catch. Now when I run it, what will happen? Let's see. So now when I run it, I am getting inside catch, which is the output here. So once the exception occurred, it came here. And then when I printed the exception, so the details of the exception were Java, it was an arithmetic exception, which was division by 0. So let us see a couple of more things. So suppose I had a system.out.println here, which is at point 1. Okay. And I put another system.out.println just after this line, which I'll call as system.out.println at point 2. Now when I run it, let's see what happens. So I got at point 1, so the code came here. Then the code came at this point, which is when the exception occurred. And when the exception occurred, instead of going down and executing line 9 and 10, the code jumped to the catch. So I reached here. So this is important to understand. Okay. So once an exception occurs within a try block, the code will jump to the catch part of it. So hence, if I look at the output, I got at point 1, which was here. I did not get at point 2 because on this line is where the exception occurred, which is division by 0. And then from here the code jumped to catch, and I got inside catch, and I got the details of the exception. Now let's say instead of y being 0, let's make the value 1. What would have happened? So in this case there would be no exception because there would be no error. 25 divided by 1 would have been 25. So let's see what would be the output in this case. So the output is at point 1. I reached this point like I did in the previous code. Then I came to this line. There was no error. System.out.println at point 2. So I got at point 2. And then I got the value of 25 and the code came out. Okay. Now suppose I write another line here, which is system.out.println at point 3 to just see what will happen in both the cases. So now when I run it here, so I got at point 1, at point 2, I got the value of z, which is 25. And because there was no exception, it did not go into the catch block, but it printed system.out.println at point 3. Okay. Is this clear? So the flow of the code was, it goes through all the statements in the try block like the flow of logic should be, or the flow of code should be. But if an exception occurs, it will come outside the try block and go into the catch. And then after the catch block, it will resume normally. So let's say what will happen if I make this 0 when the exception occurred. What will be the output? So I got at point 1, which is fine. Then the exception occurred. Because the exception occurred, the code jumped from here to this point, which is inside catch. I got inside catch. I got the description of the exception, which is arithmetic exception. And after here, it started normally again. So I got at point 3. Okay. So is this clear? Let's look at the next example. So in this example, we are getting an exception. Which one? String index out of bounds exception, because of us accessing an index which did not exist. So exactly the same way, what will we do? We will enclose the code again within a try and a catch like we did it the last time. And then we will write catch exception system.out.println. Let's say I say caught an exception here is what I print. And then what do I say? I will just print the details of the exception so that we get some more insights about it. Okay. So now I have enclosed this whole code within a try catch. Let's see what happens now. So now when I run it, what do I get? I get the code, which the same output that I was getting, and then I got caught an exception. So when I got an exception, it jumped into the catch block, and then it printed the details of the exception, that I got a string index out of bounds exception, and the details it gives me in the print is string index out of range 4. Okay. So I got the exception and I did it. Now exactly like we did in the previous code, let's write another line here. System.out.println, let's say loop over, because my loop got over here and here. So now let's run it. Let's see what happens. So when I run it, I get exactly the same output as last time, because once the exception happened on this line, it jumped to the catch block, and because it jumped to the catch block, I did not get this print. Now suppose I make this to be 3 and now run it. Now what will happen when I make this 3? Now when I make this 3, we know it will run for 0, 1, 2. I is equal to 0, I is equal to 1, and I is equal to 2. The length of the string is 4, which means the indexes of the string which exist are 0, 1, 2, and 3. So in this case, there is no issue. There will be no exception. So the code will keep on going normally. Then it will come to system.out.println loop over, and it does not go into the catch block because no exception has been caught. And if I now, like we did in the last time, just to understand, I put a print line here after the try catch block. So let's say I do this. So this line is after the try catch block. What happens here? So in the same code, after the loop over, it comes here after the catch block and it prints after the try catch block. Now suppose I go back to the same value, I less than 5, when the exception was happening. And what is the output I get in that case? So I get the output, I get caught an exception. So loop over did not get printed because here an exception occurred. It went into the exception. I got caught an exception. I got the details of the exception printed because of this line. And after this, the code execution started normally and I got after the try catch block. Okay. So is this clear?